Welcome to your first day on the job. This is your very own autopilot ship, where you will eat and sleep for the duration of your contract. Make yourself at home. To complete the onboarding process, you will want to check the instruction manual and sign into your ship's computer terminal. We trust you will be a great asset to the company. Great asset to the company. Great asset to the company. Great.
This is Lethal Company. Lethal Company is an online co-op horror game where you work for the company. This company demands that you gather scrap from various moons and bring it back to the company building. However, these moons are dangerous, infested with creatures wanting you dead. Me and my friends have been loving this game. It is an absolute gem. For being an indie project, it outsold Modern Warfare 3. And it makes sense. It is extremely well made. It is such a horrifying and comedic experience
What do you want, you stupid bug?
at the same time. So, me and Paddy thought, why not learn something completely new? Why not get better at something we already know? So, for our genius project, we present Code-Breaking Lethal Company. The goal of this project is to attempt to find a way to understand how a game works. For our case, this will be through use of developer tools, in-game experimentation, and learning to read code. We use 3 applications, technically speaking, to find the information in this video. First of all, we use Lethal Company. As an .exe file, it is technically an application, being the game we base this project around. Secondly, we used a mod for the game called Imperium. Essentially, this mod shows us a visual representation of the code in game. It gives us the opportunity to see things that aren't normally seen in gameplay, such as creature navigation, vision cones, spawning zones, and more. We use this to study where things spawn and how creatures act with trials and experimentation. Finally, we used an application called ISLEspy to see the code directly. This application finds a specific .dll file in the files of Lethal Company, and extracts all of the code and gives it to us to see. This footage you see in the background isn't even showing all of the code, it is only a few branches of the code expanded. This is a node, and this is what a map looks like. In Lethal Company, a node is a point that the game's creatures use to move around the map. They do this by finding a node within a specific radius of the creature and locking onto it, walking in a straight line to it until they reach it. Upon doing so, they will lock onto another node and move to that one, repeating this infinitely. That is what the line represents, the creature's path to the node. Specific creatures will deviate from this path if they witness a disturbance, such as seeing a player or hearing something. This example was showing an outdoor creature for the sake of the viewing experience. But this works the same for indoor creatures. However, indoor creatures just have their nodes closer together. When a hostile creature spots a player, it will abandon all node movement and instead draw a line between the creature and the player and stick to that line until enough distance is gained or line of sight is broken for too long. There are 2 lines, a white one which sticks to the surface the creature is on, and a red one that follows the player no matter the distance or elevation. Vision cones are what creatures use to spot the player. A vision cone is quite literally a cone stemming from the creature that shows its field of view. Different colored cones mean different things, but as new learners of code, we don't know for sure what they mean. Here's what our experiments have shown. A yellow cone means that the creature is searching for a player. A blue cone means that the creature has spotted a player. Now, there are cases where these don't exactly line up. There are pink cones that line up with yellow cones and blue cones that stay despite there being no player to track onto. Here are our theories. Yellow cones could be cones that go through walls, meant for creatures to find a player regardless of location and line of sight. Pink cones could act like yellow cones, but act as an initial warning for the player and acting as a cone version of the green spheres, often being an extension of yellow cones and giving the player the adrenaline effect. Blue cones could be just a general color for tracking, changing cases between creatures. Red cones could be for different shapes of vision cones, as some creatures have vision cones in the shape of a sphere. Or they could also be a form of cone that indicates whatever is in it will be attacked. Green cones could be a form of cone that if the player is in, it simply acts as a warning sign from the creature, in most cases letting off a growl such as with the Earth Leviathan. These red spheres in the facility represent the spawn areas of hazards in the facility. These hazards are things such as turrets, landmines, and spike traps. These areas simply represent the only areas, or at least most frequent areas, that hazards spawn in. These pink spheres represent loot spawns, the areas that loot can spawn in, or at least most frequently spawn in. These yellow triangles represent each piece of loot. These yellow spheres outside represent the areas that beehives can spawn in. Beehives are a sort of outdoor loot that is special in this way, being the only piece of loot that can spawn outside of the facility.
The Thumper is a carnivore with extremely uncanny skin akin to humans. It only has 2 arms which it uses to drag itself across the facility floor. As part of its birth, it was needed to remove the legs off itself from its hatched egg. It has a large mouth with beady black eyes. Along with this, it has 3 flaps that make it look like it has extra mouths above its head. After spawning in, the Thumper will have a blue vision cone. The Thumper will roam the facility for a while until it runs into a player, in which it will abandon the vision cone and track using an invisible line onto the player. The Thumper accelerates extremely quickly towards the player as it attacks, but will lose most of its momentum upon turning a corner or hitting a wall.
The Butler is a human that looks like its name, a butler that sweeps up the floor wherever it goes. Although, he gives off unsettling vibes and is said to stink. After spawning in, the Butler has an extremely large yellow vision cone, spanning almost the entire map. In this case, it uses this to guide itself to the player from across the facility, as it does not roam but rather tries to find the player as quickly as possible. After finding a player or group of players, it will sit around and sweep the floor. If it is left alone with a single player for around 10 seconds, the Butler will abandon the broom and unsheath a knife, attacking the lonely player until another player sees the attack. It will eliminate the player in 10 very quick attacks.
Masked hornets work extremely similar to circuit bees, which will be discussed later, but they're just an indoor version. They'll spawn after a Butler is eliminated, in which case it will use the facade of the Butler, and once it's broken, it pops up like a balloon, revealing the hornets that were holding the puppet together. They will begin pathfinding throughout the facility, and upon finding a player, will relentlessly chase them as a swarm. The swarm cannot be injured or damaged in any way. They deal damage similar to the circuit bees. The Bracken is a plant-like humanoid that stalks from afar, with 2 bright white eyes and plant-like appendages from the back. It emits a unique sound like the brushing of leaves as it moves. Upon spawning, it will navigate to a point far from the main entrance, labeled its nest. After a player gets close enough in proximity to the Bracken and its nest, the Bracken will begin to pathfind near the closest player. Afterwards, it will sneak up behind the player, crouch down and completely silent. If the player sees the Bracken, it will retreat, but only if looked at brutally and not stared at. If it is stared at, he will begin his charging phase, attacking the player and almost instantly eliminating them once close enough. If no player sees it in time, it will eliminate the next player around it. After elimination, the Bracken will drag the player far away from the rest of the group. Snareflea is a huge centipede-like bug that hides in the facility. When spawning in, it will pathfind to a random spot around it and shoot a web up to the ceiling, pulling itself up and hiding there out of sight. It uses this to hunt. If a player walks beneath the Snareflea, it will drop down onto the player and wrap itself around the player's head to suffocate them. It can be hit off with a weapon, but the player being attacked must find the weapon after the flea makes them drop it. A teammate can also help by hitting the player. If hit, the Snareflea will pathfind to a location away from the players and repeat the hiding process again. It can eliminate the players in an estimated 20 to 10 seconds, as it does a small amount of damage but quickly while on a player's head. Swarms of locusts that randomly spawn outside the facility. They do not interact with the player and will disperse if a player comes too close. The Ghost Girl is a young girl that appears to only one person in the team, driving them crazy and watching them from afar. She does not work with any nodes or anything similar to any of these creatures. She is very unique. She will only appear to the player with the highest amount of insanity, which is built up with rapid movement of both the camera and the body of the player. Upon appearing to a player, the player's audio will become muffled and they will only be able to hear church bells ringing and a breathing of a girl. If the girl is spotted, before the player gets too far, she will skip away. This cycle repeats around 3 to 4 times until the Ghost Girl becomes aggressive. On this aggressive sighting, she will begin to skip towards the player, not using nodes, but rather tracking straight towards the player. At this point, the player will not survive. The ghost girl will relentlessly chase the player until eliminated. Upon being caught, the ghost girl will explode the player's head, an instant elimination. The ghost girl will then move on to the next player with the highest insanity, repeating the cycle. Bunker spiders are extremely large spiders that take refuge inside the facility, webbing it up as they go along. They tend to randomly roam around the nodes within a given area, and only webbing up an even smaller area in that first spot. After enough time, they will perch up wherever they've webbed and stay still, waiting for something to come near. If a player hits a web or comes near enough, the bunker spider will then charge towards that disturbance, relentlessly charging at it for a while until enough distance is gained. If left with an eliminated player, it will web up and leave it dangling from the ceiling. Hoarding bugs are seemingly friendly and large insects that roam the facility and hoard loot. Hoarding bug has red vision as well as a pink and yellow vision cone. Upon spawning in, the hoarding bug will use nodes to pathfind to a nest just like the bracken. It will stay there for a bit before going off to find loot to bring back to its nest. If it comes across a player while in the nest or on the prowl, it will freeze and hold its two arms up, only moving if left alone. If a player gets within the red sphere of a hoarding bug for too long, or if a player steals a piece of loot from the hoarding bug's nest, it will begin to attack, flying at about the head level of the player and attacking them, dealing about 30 damage per tick and only attacking every second or two. It can eliminate the player in around 4 hits. Upon doing so, it will resume to normal activity and continue to gather loot. Circuit bees spawn outside on beehives, clumping onto their hive until a player comes too close. If a player does come too close, they will stick together and swarm and fly towards the player, emitting electrical currents between each other, trapping the player in the swarm. They may abandon the chase if the player gets too far, returning to their hive. After spawning outside, eyeless dogs will roam via nodes throughout the map. It does not track the player or anything, not even having a vision cone. It will only change its node movement if it hears something. Whether it be a player walking, a player dropping loot, or another outdoor enemy, it will growl loudly and lunge to wherever the sound was made. The eyeless dog will attack anything that makes noise, and upon coming into contact with a player, will bite them and eliminate them instantly. Coilheads are inorganic mannequins that roam the facility at extremely fast speeds. They look like a bruised up mannequin without arms and their neck being replaced by a spring, leaving their head bobbing around. They spawn with a large red sphere, possibly being the radius that a player may look at it and freeze, roaming the facility until they come into contact with an eyesight of a player, in which they will freeze instantly. They work like weeping angels from Doctor Who, freezing when looked at and moving insanely fast when not. The coilheads cease node movement for when they are found and instead will track towards the closest player. If a coilhead gets too close to a player while not being seen, it will instantly eliminate a player. Earth leviathans are gigantic worms that live underneath the ground of each moon. They sit under the surface of the sand, burrowing through it and waiting for their moment to strike. And when they do, they open their mouths and devour anything above them, soaring through the air before landing back on the ground. Earth leviathan will roam throughout the outside nodes very slowly. If a player steps into the bigger sphere, the leviathan will begin to growl, letting know the player is near. A countdown begin. When the time hits 0, the Earth leviathan breaches the surface and will rumble around and give off dirt particles where it's going to erupt from, before bursting through the ground and swallowing anything directly above it, soaring through the air and landing back on the ground to repeat the process all over again. Being caught directly above the surface when the leviathan breaches will be an instant elimination for any player above it. The Nutcracker is a human-sized toy soldier that roams the facility with a shotgun. It will spawn and roam throughout nodes and will randomly open up its mouth and move its head upward, revealing an organic eye on the inside. It will spin this eye around to scan for anything moving with a blue vision cone. If it sees no movement, it will continue roaming through the nodes. If it does see movement, it will begin to play an American Revolution-esque music while charging towards the player, letting off 2 rounds of its double-barrel shotgun at a time. If a player gets too close, regardless of being spotted or not, the Nutcracker will kick the player, instantly eliminating them. If spotted while searching, the shotgun can deal enough damage to instantly eliminate the player, but it can be survived. Old birds are giant robots with all sorts of defenses used as both orbital and land defense for each moon. Built up with rockets, turrets, missiles, thrusters, and extremely bright spotlights and auditory defenses, they have 4 phases in which they'll take action in. At first, they will be turned off, completely still and deactivated. However, if the moon is eclipsed after 3 p.m., or the apparatus is removed, most old birds will activate and gain a vision cone. At this point, they will slowly move through the nodes in short bursts, letting off loud robotic beeps as they do this. If they don't spot a player for long enough, they will thrust into the atmosphere and engage an extremely large vision sphere, where they scan for threats. After spotting a threat for being in the air, they will float back down. If a player is spotted either in its roaming phase or the flying phase, the old bird will shine a bright spotlight onto the player and start emitting one of few auditory distractions, such as babies crying, music, or speech-like beeping. It will begin to eliminate the player by shooting rockets at them that don't do a lot of damage but send the player flying. They also can eliminate the player by grabbing them and incinerating them with a built-in flamethrower. The player can be eliminated within 1 to 10 rockets and will be instantly eliminated if incinerated with a flamethrower. After eliminating the player, they will keep the spotlight on but enter the roaming phase once again.
The spore lizard is a timid, crocodile-like creature that roams inside the facility. It has no eyes, rather a huge mouth with sharp teeth and a tail with a purple mass on the end. After spawning, the spore lizard will roam the facility until finding a player, freezing upon eye contact. The spore lizard will attempt to back up from the player if the player gets closer, not wanting any contact. However, if too close or provoked, the spore lizard will bite the player and deal a tiny amount of damage, emitting a large cloud of harmless purple smoke to escape. Upon spawning in, the jester beelines it straight to the players. Upon finding them, it will enter a following phase where it simply stays close to the players it found. After a little while, the jester will stand still and start to crank up, a distorted version of Pop Goes the Weasel. After about 30 to 40 seconds, the jester will pop, revealing a large, horrifying skull and will beeline it towards the closest player regardless of line of sight or location. The jester knows where all players are at all times. It will rapidly accelerate towards the closest player and will lose its momentum and have to build it up again after every elimination. The jester is a one-hit elimination to any player. Baboon hawks are human-sized, flightless birds that roam outside the facility. They tend to hunt in packs, but can be scared by bigger groups of players. When spawning in, it has 4 vision cones, a small blue one, a bigger yellow one, an even bigger pink one, and a huge pink sphere. They roam through nodes until close enough to a player, where they may begin to freeze, back up, or squawk. If outnumbered, it will most likely retreat. If it outnumbers the player, it will charge and peck at the player, dealing 20 damage for every peck. It can eliminate the player in 5 hits. Manticoils are simply bird-like creatures that relax around the map. They will not interact with the player, but will fly away if the player gets too close. After spawning outside, the Forest Keeper will roam around the outside of the map. It does not track toward the player, but will act upon seeing the player. Every now and then, the Forest Keeper will pause and look around suddenly. If a player is visible to the Forest Keeper, it will abandon all previous movements and outstretch its arms and book it to the player. The player can outrun the Forest Keeper as long as they aren't carrying too much, but the Forest Keeper is ruthless and will pursue the chase until it eliminates the player or loses sight for too long. A player can avoid a chase altogether by hiding behind something while the Keeper searches. Upon getting close enough to the player, the Forest Keeper will pick up the player and eat them, instantly eliminating them. The Hygridir is a living blob of green slime that slowly roams the facility, attracted to noise. Upon spawning in, it will roam through nodes extremely slowly, sometimes moving towards the nearest player if loud enough, but also being attracted towards music from the boombox. If a player steps too close or in the Hygridir, it will deal 35 damage 4 times per second, eliminating the player extremely quickly. It has no vision cones or spheres, just a small hitbox that counts as to where the player will be dealt damage. Tulip snakes are seemingly harmless bird-like reptiles that roam the outside of the map. Regardless of proximity to a player, they will launch themselves in random directions and glide around. Upon spotting a player, they will launch themselves toward the player and if close enough, land on the player's head. Up to 3 tulip snakes can latch onto one player. Every tulip snake on a player will seemingly lower the gravity of a player, allowing them to jump further, but with caution. You will still take fall damage. The tulip snakes can harm players by making them jump too high and fall to their elimination, or jump too high and land in some sort of, deadly machinery like a spinning industrial fan. The Barber is a fever dream, a solid purple humanoid figure with a cartoonishly large pair of scissors wearing white gloves. It will roam the facility, only being visible to players that are close enough to it, being completely invisible otherwise. It makes a unique honking noise every time it moves, only moving in short, quick bursts of movement. Upon spawning in, it will roam randomly through nodes. If it just so happens the pair of scissors lines up with the player and the Barber gets close enough to the player, the Barber will cut up the player, splitting their body apart. Regardless, this is an instant elimination. The Maneater is a creature that fools the player. It acts as a baby, only turning into a monster when agitated. Spawning in, it will crawl around in baby form to the nearest player. It will follow a player of its choosing and will begin to cry if not given attention. A player can pick up the baby and shake it to calm it down. However, shaking it too much, leaving it alone, hitting it, or making a loud noise will cause it to come closer to transforming. Once a certain threshold for the baby is met, it will transform, spreading new legs and lunging for every player at fast speeds. It will instantly eliminate any player it touches. The masked are former employees of the company that were taken over by some sort of magic comedy or tragedy mask left on each moon by their former crewmates. When spawning in, they have an extremely large pink vision cone meant for tracking straight to the player. Upon finding a player, they will act in one of two ways. Acting, where they seem to walk, jump, and run around like a normal player while in an actual player's sight. Or attacking, where they begin to run straight toward the player with outstretched arms and attempt to grab and eliminate the player. A mask eliminates the player uniquely, transforming them into another mask, eliminating them instantly but leaving the reanimated body to join the army. Overall, this project has taught us some useful things in today's world. Working with code and a better understanding of programming are key elements of many of today's jobs. Honestly though, what pushed us to actually learn these seemingly hard topics is using something we love to do it. Lethal Company, to Paddy and I, and millions of others, is a game near and dear to our hearts. The laughs, the scares, the 6-hour-long sessions over break, it's something you never forget. We learned one of the most complex fields of study in today's world through using something we love. Maybe you can do the same. What do you love and what can you apply it to? Cheesy morals aside, thanks for watching.